Hi, welcome to the bathtub. It's the old masturbator, Scott Bradfield, and this is the summer splendor episode. I'm wearing my splendiferous Hawaiian shirt with the flamingos on it and the fantans, and we're very hot here. You're not like most of the country or the world, but we're pretty warm here in SLO, and my office doesn't take the heat very well. I've exiled Dodo to the hallway. She's gone quiet. She's pretty upset. She drive me. I filmed half of this as usual, and she went crazy, and she just wanted to get out. And then she started trying to have sex with my hand, and she's going through this broody thing where she wants to have eggs all the time. So I thought that's not for fam. That's not a family show. Parakeet trying to have sex with my hand, and what else? So then she wouldn't go in her cage, and finally there she's in there. She's pretty upset in there. She'll be okay. Anyway, she'll be right back in. We're doing a new theme show here. It's a new theme show because we don't have enough theme shows at the bathtub. YouTube has called us and written about it, and we don't, as usual, we don't have. I don't know if I have a theme. We don't have a theme song for this. It's called To Digitize or Not to Digitize, or Adventures in Bookshelf Management. That's our new show, our new theme show. Because we talk about books and books I read and books I think about, what I do in the bathtub, just book-wise in the bathtub. And one of the things I spend a large part of my time with books, as you may have noticed. When I'm not cleaning the bird cage or walking the dog, I spend about 50% of my time reading books, 50% of my time at least buying books and going around buying books, and at least 50% of my time trying to make room on my shelves for all the books I keep buying and reading, and trying to get books off the shelves. We talked about this in my last episode. We did the first episode of this already. I gave you some examples of books that, are just really big and are hard to get rid of. Like there's certain books, for example, I think I said to you, I don't know if you noticed this. I think we talked about it. The Nabokov's letters, selected letters, is available on Kindle. And it's a big, goddamn fat hardcover book. It takes up a huge amount of space. So when I do need to go back and look at his letters again, or spend any time with him, and I want to browse through them, I can pick them up fairly inexpensively on Kindle. And that book, I'm going to get rid of that book. So this is some of the examples I gave. Another example I mentioned was the 2-volume Brian Boyd biography of Nabokov. It's huge. It covers about this much space. I mean, seriously, I could buy another parakeet in a cage for that. Not that I want another one. But on Kindle, all my notes are in the hardcover I've got. So I can't really get rid of them easily. Second of all, the Kindles are about $30, $35 a piece. So it's $60, $70 for 2 Kindles editions. I have to keep those for now. So this is basically the parameters of this incredibly uninteresting to anybody who doesn't have to deal with the problem of putting their books away. That's all we're talking about here. So all the sensible people can just go on and look at, I don't know, comedy routines or, I don't know, famous models. Look at models. Anyway, here's some other ideas I have. I have a little allergy problem too, and I'm probably going to do something I try not to do here at the bathtub. But, it happens. I have to blow my nose. Yeah. So in the one I threw away, I had to try to get the parakeet out of my head, and this time I'm trying to blow my nose. Here's some examples of the things we worry about here at the bathtub, and sometimes spend a large part of the day doing. Here was an easy digitizing choice. To digitize or not to digitize. I've had these 2 books on Auden for ages. Big fat hardcover. I got them very cheap somewhere. I forget, some like bargain basement or something for like $1 a piece. I like Auden a lot. I've heard these are really good. It's the early Auden and the late Auden. His biography, his big fat biography. It's huge. Again, you could pretty much hold the door open. You could buy a cat that would fit into this space. You could do all sorts of stuff with that space. And I've always wanted to read them. I never have. I've never read them, so I haven't made any notes in them, so I don't have to worry about them too much. And I don't know that I'll get much money for them on eBay, but I can sell them and get them out of here. And I can, most importantly, I looked, and as much as we all hate Bezos, and we all hate Kindle, we all hate Amazon, we're kind of stuck with some of them. and I have so many books and biographies. I like biographies on Kindle. I prefer them in a way because of all the notes are easier. It's easier to make notes in them and to keep the notes, and then all the footnotes are easier to check out on and to read. So anyway, I can get these on Kindle fairly reasonable, $5 or $6 a piece. I'm afraid those are going to be gone. So that was a fairly easy choice. Same here, Captured by the Indians. I really like, I don't know if we talked about it, I really like captivity narratives, the stuff about early Americans who were taken off by the locals, the local natives who took them off as for various reasons, for slaves or for ransom or whatever. And I wrote a novel I'm quite proud of, called The People Who Watched Her Pass By, which is about a little girl who goes off into the wilderness of America. And I was reading some of these stories around that time. Anyway, I read these since I was in grad school. I really like these books. I never made any notes in this volume. I don't know if I some of these are available on Kindle. They're available online at various research bases. And I have this lovely Dover copy. I think I bought it for 99 cents somewhere. Beautiful, great shape, no marks on it. It's available on Kindle, so I don't need to keep this. So whenever I want it, I can get it. I'm getting rid of that book. Here's a trickier one. Did I get rid of the tricky? Oh, this took a little work. So this is the sort of stuff we do here. We talked about Sheldon M. Novick's first volume of the Henry James biography. It was called The Young Master, and the sequel is called The Mature Master. I'm not a big Henry James fan. I told you I can understand people taking him to the bathtub. Great. I think just for me, I'm not wild about him. I loved a Portrait of a Lady in grad school. I remember reading that all the way through and enjoying most of that, and some of the stories. To Turn of the Screw is pretty damn good, actually. But the first biography, but Novick, and I've read some serious literary biographies of him. I thought the Novick biography was terrific. It really got me into the character. He does a really good job of kind of dealing with James's relationships with men. He basically had romantic relationships with men, which are dealt with very sensibly and respectfully by Novick as kind of background. So he doesn't really dwell on it or dwell on his sexuality and all that stuff that so many biographers bore us with. It just kind of, he worked it into the story really well, and the story of his production of these books. I really loved it. I've always wanted to read The Mature Master since I read that first volume 10 years ago. But it's not available on Kindle, or so I thought. I was always looking on Kindle. I was always hoping it would come out on Kindle so I could get rid of this because there was never a paperback of this edition of this. So I kept looking it up on Amazon, and the first volume was on Kindle. Eventually I said, well, what the hell? I looked on Google to see if it was available from anybody else. And I wrote the title in, and it's Novick's name, and Google took me to a link to Amazon where this book is available on Kindle for like $6 or $7. I don't know how Amazon search engine won't let you find that, but that was something. That was a little detective work. I could get rid of this big fat book, and I'll be just as happy with the Kindle on that edition. Okay, here we get into a little trickier territory. Here's some tricky territory. What are we going to do with some of these books? To digitize or not to digitize? We're big Clark Ashton Smith fans here. When I started reading Clark Ashton Smith about 6, 7 years ago to write a piece about him, because this wonderful work Centipede was doing with him and what Hippocampus was doing with his work, I started buying some first editions because he's a California writer, and I thought these were really cool books to have. This is his second volume of stories, published while he was still alive, published 20 or 30 years after their original publication. It's called Lost Worlds. It's a beautiful book. It's one of the most beautiful books I've ever seen. I got a pretty good deal on it, under $100, I think. Anyway, that's the artwork of Clark Ashton Smith. That's his sculptures and stuff on the cover. I love this book. It's just a beautiful looking book. I don't like reading hardcover fiction, and I also am afraid of hurting this book because it's worth quite a bit more than I paid for it. So eventually I've been thinking, well, I'm going to get all these old Panther in the UK has been used to years ago, published these Arkham House editions in like 2 volumes apiece. These kind of cool paperbacks. Look at those. That's the 2-volume edition of Lost Worlds. I just finally collected the second one of these recently. It's a little beat up, but it did okay. I got them both for about $25 together. $25, $30. That's actually a steal. They're really expensive online. They cost a lot of money online. But I like those. And I kind of prefer reading paperbacks. Now I've got to decide, am I going to get rid of this? They're basically the same space. Look at that beautiful book. But, you know, I can't keep every beautiful book in this house. I'm beautiful enough. I don't know. I can't keep... and again, I keep thinking, well, something's going to happen to me. My wife is going to see this, and some idiot's going to come in and buy all my books for $1. And if something happens to me, I might as well sell it and take my wife to dinner. Here's another writer we talk about a lot. My friend and wonderful writer, Avram Davidson. I've had all his paperbacks, the old mass market paperbacks, or All the Seas with Oysters, Avram Davidson, short stories. Terrific book. I think it's his first book, his first paperback book. I think it's the first edition. I've been getting I had all his stuff in short story collections. Another paperback, mass market, Strange Seas and Shores. A much later edition called Collected Fantasies. We've talked about this, The Great Enquiries of Dr. Esterhazy, one of the real classics, secret classics of American literature of the past 50, 60 years. Wonderful, wonderful story. Now, I have all the paperbacks, and a lot of this wonderful work has been done over the past 30, 40 years to bring Avram's books out into other editions. So that, for example, the Avram Davidson Treasury was brought out like 25 years ago with introductions by all these wonderful writers. I noticed there were some setting problems, some typographical problems in some of these stories and in some of Avram's earlier collections. And I brought it to the attention of his stepson, Seth Davis, and he's been doing all these wonderful e-book editions of Avram's work. So these are stories, most of which I have in other editions. The introductions are really worth having. It's a lovely book, but I now have this wonderful e-book that Seth Davis has put together, and I'm going to probably get rid of it. I just don't have room for it anymore. Similar, I'm probably ultimately going to do that with some of these other books that Seth has done wonderful jobs with. They're so big, they're so beautiful, but this wonderful AD 100, I don't know where I'll put it, and I've already picked up the e edition of it on Amazon for they cost like $12 or something. So all the material is there, and they're pretty good books, and they're hard to read as they are. So that's another. That was a trickier one. There was a trick. I did this quite a while ago. This is not digitizing question. This is Tom Dish. I have all his books on hardcover first editions. I started selling them, even the signed first editions. I don't have room just for the mass markets. It's hard to find a mass market of The Priest, Tom Dish's best novel, but I managed to get that online, and I used to have it in England. It's worth having. What's some other ones we have here? For example, I can't get rid of books like this. This is Avram's Redwood Edward papers. There is no e-book equivalent of this. It's the only edition of this cycle of stories, which I haven't read, and even an e-book edition of it, I'd probably prefer to have the original hard copy, just because that's the way I am. Where else have we got? We have a few more things in here. Just 2 or 3 more, and I'm going to stop. This has been enough. I think we talked about this. Great book, Life and Letters, John Steinbeck. He is one of the writers who I do like to just read his letters. And I got this fairly cheap. It's kind of beat up, and it's available as a Kindle. And I don't have any notes in it, so I'm afraid I'm going to digitize it. It's going to be digitized. And I think this is the final one for this episode. I got this lovely book. This is the advanced review copies. The wonderful work Hippocampus did in recovering all of Arthur Macon's collected fiction. It's the bound galley, so they probably made some corrections in it. And they actually, over the pandemic, distributed a wonderful e-format book of the final finished copy with all the corrections in it. I don't have any notes in it. I really don't want to get rid of this book, but it's just so huge. I like having a hard copy of Hill of Dreams, but it's just so much material, a lot of which I'm probably not going to read that closely, and I have it all as a nice e-format book. So what can I do? Anyway, and then finally, I think I'm going to get... I'm a big fan. We talked about it. Astounding. Alec Navala Lee's wonderful biography of John Campbell and the important writers in his stable at Astounding. I keep wanting to get rid of this book. and I have an audiobook copy of it. I have an ebook copy of it. And you know why I'm keeping this? For you guys. Because every time I do In the Footsteps of Astounding, I kind of like to show the book. I can't really show the Kindle. So anyway, I'm keeping that just for you. Just to show you what a great guy I am. Anyway, that's it. It's very hot here. Thanks for bearing with this. This is even more disjointed episode than normal. I'm going to do 2 more disjointed episodes. Even with my itchy nose and my horny parakeet, who's out living in the hallway right now, writing dirty notes to some other parakeet. Okay, bye.